Okay, it's recording.
Do we look pretty enough yet to record? Yes, you're back to navigating the ship. We'll try to be pretty again in order to so you can enjoy this recording. Annabelle and I are total nuts. That's why our spiritual support team is called the Serendipity team, which means Sarah,
and
Dippy team.
Yeah.
So they match us very well. And here we are in all our glory. So we're going to talk today about this amazing event that happened in Egypt the day before Easter, which is called the Pharaoh's Golden Parade, where 22 pharaohs, most going back between about 3,000 to 3,500 years ago, a particular group of them, and some very famous ones that we've heard of, Ramses and Thutmose and Akhenaten, the one who went for the one God and all of that were part of this. It was 18 male kings and 4 female queens. And I've always been just like fascinated with Egypt. My higher self is the being that they call Osiris. I as soon as I saw this was going on, I'm like, I gotta look into that. I gotta find what it means, what's it about, what's the symbolism. And I spent quite a bit of time doing it, both research online and connecting with the Christ consciousness about what this was. And the very first thing I got was that it had to do with honoring the sacred feminine and bringing the balance back to the sacred. And this guy, President Sisi, was very prominent in it. I went and learned about him. He evidently was military. Actually, what happened in Egypt, I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe 12, was very much like what happened in Myanmar.
Huge protests and violence. Yeah, was terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the previous guy was...
I don't know his name, but it was a Muslim Brotherhood people, and they were just, the Christians were going, that'll be the end of us if we don't do something about this right now.
Yes. And evidently, President Sisi is very much more open to the Copts or the Christians in Egypt. So he did a military takeover, and he didn't intend to become president, but they got him in there and elected him. And I looked at him going through the tarot cards, which I'm enjoying learning and practicing with, but also just, like I said, connecting with the Christ consciousness. And I just got that basically he's very shy. He's not confident in public, which is why he looks kind of like deadpan when I looked at various things of him speaking and during the ceremony. But also he's not confident in being able to read people. His wife is very shy. He's very protective of his family. So when I read that she wears the hijab, I was like, she doesn't like it, but she does it to keep her safe, not because she's being oppressed by her husband or by the religion.
But he must have approved of this idea, this whole ceremony in the first place. So
of course.
He can't be too dominating to the point where he goes, no, we're going to keep the patriarchy. He must have been supportive of this. Yeah.
Right. Part of the reason Egypt did this, of course, was to encourage tourism. So they were showing about, because of President Sisi, this new museum has been opened and this wonderful old mosque has been redone. And they were showing how all the things he'd done to rebuild their symbols, their buildings, their symbols of the past, their buildings, their galleries, etc. So he's very much a part of it. So that was my read on that. It could look really bad, but it could, if you understand that. And as I was watching this, the symbolism was amazing. The colors, majority of the colors were blue and white.
And gold.
And lots of gold. So I was looking into that symbolism. I looked it up for Christianity, and I also looked it up for ancient Egypt. And I also looked at black, because at the end, there's this huge finale, which evidently was sung in ancient Egyptian. And I found out what it is in English, which is very interesting. You'll have to just keep watching to find out how special it is. But the symbolism of the colors. So white, of course, represents purity, also birth. That's Christianity. And in Egypt, it's radiance, joy, light, and purity. So it's light and purity. There's so much white and blue in all the actors, dancers, singers, etc., and the various speakers. Blue another dominant color, represents heaven to the Christians and divinity to the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians. Gold, Christian glory of God, Egypt, the sun, Ra. And there was so much of that symbolism.
I remember, can I drop in there, Robert Sepper and a lot of his amazing documentaries that he's done, little baby documentaries, his videos, has often pointed to gold being, because it's such a great conductor of electricity, but probably of energy as well, that, you know, when you often have the pointy dunce hats that they were used to connect to consciousness, the person who wore that pointy hat was connected, which is why it may have turned up in the legends of the witches and all the rest as well. So the idea of the Egyptians wearing lots of gold around here might also have lifted their own viewpoint, that they could connect in much easier and channel.
That really matches a lot of what several of the people were really focusing on, about basically how do they build the pyramids. And it's really interesting the way they spoke about it. But I want to finish with one other color, which you see some dancers, men, and one of the final three singers, which were all women, wearing, which is black. And black in both represents death and also eternity. Like before the creation, the universe was blackness, and then light was born. And so you have the full circle. Oh, there was a little bit of red. It was on I think it was the Chariots. And then during the parade, there was also a bunch of guys in black on motorcycles going along, and they had red flashing lights in front.
The other thing with death, of course, is that ancient Egyptians did not see death as a big deal. It was not a problem. You know, you move in and out of physical form. It was not, they don't see death the same way as we do.
Right. Not an ending, but just a moving to another place, another state, you could say. The other Egyptian symbolism of black is that each year the Nile would inundate, flood, and cover the land in black silt, and that was the fertile land.
That was the nutrition that spread out over the that's why they could plant and get wonderful harvests along the edges of the river after that dumping.
Yes, there was a little bit of green, and green in Egyptian is, for one thing, Osiris was shown with green skin to represent fertility, nourishment, nature, all of that stuff. So it was good stuff. There wasn't any purple. And there was not a
not your
single. I know, but you know, purple
no orange
has been shown as being a color that the deep state, the dark guys, the bad guys use. And even though it seemed like it would be really easy, there was not one single eye of Ra. There wasn't any, what is it, this? They never lit a pyramid up so that, you know, just the top was glowing or vice versa. Absolutely absent. There were ankhs, there were wings, winged suns, scarab beetles, other really classic Egyptian symbols, but none of those eyes.
So very specifically avoiding the deep state symbols. Interesting. Okay.
The first woman to speak is a presenter, is what I saw on her. She's wearing all white. And then there was several men who talked, and one of them, actually two of them, went on about this. So they spoke about an ingenious architect. He worked with Queen Hatshepsut, who was one of the greatest queens of the world, they said. And she was the one who built the Temple Deir al-Bahara with this great architect. She designated special privileges to women for their proficiency, deftness, prudence, and sturdiness. Whatever that is. Now, what I've read is, right?
Imagine being my virtue. I go on a dating site. I am sturdy.
I'm very sturdy. Yes, I know a woman who has a husband who's not very good at romance. And at one time she said, do you think I have nice legs? She says, you have very good legs. They're good. And she was like, does that just mean they're sturdy and they work well? What did he mean by that? I just thought it was kind of funny. That's why that word triggered me. At any rate, moving on. She was the origin of a proverb, a woman as strong as 100 men. So they started off with all this stuff. It's really fascinating. A lot of what was spoken and sung, especially in the first part of it, was from the Book of the Dead and various other proverbs from that particular temple that I mentioned. They said, Egypt is the bearer of talent and creativity. Egypt is the bearer of civilization and culture. There was a whole lot about the birth of culture, the land of civilization, and all of that. The first land to know stability and prosperity. The secret is not limited to astronomy, medicine, or engineering, and I am quoting here. Neither is it defined by the sciences which they excelled at, later adapted by others. The secret lies down here, the heart. Think of what they were wearing, connecting to the heart. The concept of mat, which is a perfect order, which favors the good cause, truthfulness, balance, and equality. There we are once again. Mat is the balance, masculine and feminine. So there were so many things talked about. And they didn't say, they had extraterrestrials build it for them. Of course not. But they said it was, they kept saying things about creed and faith. Let me finish reading. All achievements start with an idea, with the imagination, through belief that allowed them to achieve, through knowledge and proficiency, made the dream reality. Proficiency is spoken a lot, the heart and faith. The inscriptions are our true heritage. Rather than the buildings, what's written in there is their true inheritance. I thought that was pretty cool. Almost all the dancers were women. And at one point, they went out to a square. I can't remember what it's called, but the center of it is this obelisk, right? Oh, by the way, I know somebody who's Egyptian who wrote a book because he discovered the secret of the obelisks, how they were made, how they were put up, and all of that. And the classical Egyptologists are totally rejecting it. It doesn't match what they've taught. So having a hard time getting his book out. But originally, they always came in pairs, the masculine and the feminine.
Now that's weird. Would they stand beside each other, or would they stand opposite each other, or what's the story?
I don't know that, but they were never just a single one. But I think, when they went and grabbed them and took them to the Washington, D.C., and to the Vatican and to the city of London.
Do you think they were moved there and not built there?
Oh yeah, they were moved there. They were probably grabbed the masculine one.
I see.
And not the feminine one.
Right.
So another power grab for the distorted masculine energy.
Because if you look at that Ether video where I don't believe she's got all the story right, but she sees the commonality, the connection between, a building and its obelisk close to the water, or sometimes there's a channel of water that runs between the building and domed building and the obelisk as a method of possibly wireless free scalar energy to power the spaces around it. And she couldn't quite figure out how the obelisk fits in, but it's always in that same pattern. It's always there. So
I wonder if one of the ways they disabled that technology was by removing the feminine obelisk.
That's right.
Yeah. Might have been on the other side of the building or something like that.
Or lined up, maybe, or goodness knows, because they're not off center. They are definitely
right.
Yeah, it's not like one's missing, like one's out on the side or anything. Yeah.
Although that is how the Sphinx is.
Yes,
there's that aisle that goes down, and I've
definitely
heard that there was originally 2 Sphinxes.
Absolutely.
So now there's only one. And I've seen aerial pictures where you can kind of see the pattern of the base of the other Sphinx as well.
Yeah.
So the presentation had this huge philharmonic orchestra with original music written for it. By the way, by a guy, I think his last name is Nazar, which made me think of Christ the Nazarene. But that could just be one of those little, who knows, 3 famous women singers, all dressed in beautiful, flowy gowns. Remember when Melania wore that dress that it had these long, flowy sleeves that were open behind? They're like stopped here, but this thing, and it went over her shoulder, but it was loose. A lot of those kind of dresses. And they could have just been sort of symbolizing capes, maybe like ancient costumes might have been, or maybe, maybe there is some connection there. I talked to a friend of mine who has Egypt connections, and I told her what I was getting about President Sisi. Mm-hmm. By the way, Sisi backwards spells ISIS, just so you know. And she agreed that felt right from what she knew from the people she knows who live there.
One thing about the obelisk, so there's a photo you've sent us here, and I'll put the link below for this series of photos, that with the obelisk, they shot laser beams up to the very top that intercepted and then spread out at the top. Now, I remember when I was doing all those channel lessons for years, that during that time, I was told that the pyramid is a very rudimentary representation of 3D, that the thought comes in to a point and then splits into 3D. And that's what it's trying to show you, is the height, the depth, and the width. 3D is how it comes out. However, it does make a pyramid above that again, that there is the point that you come into 3D, and then above that is where the thought came in the first place. So that those images from the laser beams are exactly representing that.
Yeah. Earlier in it, you can see the blue lights, and then later above that was bright white, and they take an overview shot of it, and it's like a sun just shining out the white light. So this is the obelisk with the blue light. This is the square, and you can see some of the dancers with their gossamer wings.
They're called Isis wings.
White and gold. Oh, there you go.
Belly dancers use them even today.
You would know. So they show a bunch of children all dressed in white with some sort of ombre blue, and they're all running up a path to this obelisk. And the one in front, a young man, a boy, is carrying one of these light globes, like a gold bowl on the bottom with some blue and a white dome over it. And he's out in front leading them up to the obelisk. And when I saw that, I was like, that's Christ / Horus, or I could say Horus / Christ, who came first. That's the child
I see.
of Isis and Osiris, of Mother Mary and Joseph, or Spirit, who leads the way. Because I knew there was the Osiris, Isis, Horus thing, and that whole story, which is so much like the Christ story. I knew they were connected, so I was kind of looking for it and waiting for the hits to come through and communication to come through, quite frankly. So he leads them up, and then the women are dancing. It's really, really nice. And at the end, there's all this great music, beautiful dancers going on. There's some people in black who are at a huge temple, like going down like this, and kind of like death. And then later there's some white that comes up, and they're dancing like this and up, and Egyptian things and high, so it's the dark black and the high up.
Just the contrast between the two. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we had the three singers, the one on the right. So keep in mind, Arabic goes right to left. So the number one on the right would
start with the right.
Start with the right. She's wearing big old black dress with some gold with a little bit of sort of light blue in it. So light blue isn't as powerful as the dark blue to me, and it's mostly black. Remember, the symbol is like death. I think would be like the death card in the tarot. Maybe it symbolizes the death of the old. And then the next one over is this beautiful drapey dress. And they weren't designed for this. Specific designers made them all.
Oh, okay.
And specific jewelers. They had beautiful jewelry. And they had famous jewelers in Egypt. I was reading all about that too. It's pretty cool. So she's wearing that with a little bit of gold, like on her shoulders, which I thought, the strength, the carrying the weight of the gold, but the blue is the spirit, the heaven, all of that coming in. And then the last one is wearing pure gold, nothing but gold.
Wow.
So it's return to the light, return to the sun god,
right.
Return to spirit, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out this beautiful song, it's quite haunting, is we'll also put a link to a webpage where you can
Read the words.
Hear this song and see the translation. But the song is actually sung in ancient Egyptian.
It's very feminine.
Yes, it's from hymns of reverence for Isis. How could you be more obvious than that? And it's at the Shelmet Temple in Luxor. So the lyrics are, O people and gods above, she is the only lady, reverence of Aset, or Eset, which is the Comedian, ancient Egyptian name for Isis. She gives birth to the day, reverence for Aset, lady of the West and two lands. So keep in mind, West is
the two lands on either side of the Nile. Is that what you mean?
North and south. But the West is where they buried people. So that represents the spirit world, the next world.
Oh, I see.
She is the great eye of Ra. You offer the dear and precious for the king of Egypt, upper and lower. Oh, my only lady, reverence for thee.
So the great eye of Ra, that's interesting as well, isn't it?
Yes, they don't show a symbol for it anymore.
Do they mean
hijacked?
Do they mean that to be right? Yeah, they don't want it to be shown up as comparing to how they've used it now. But the great eye of Ra being wisdom,
the sun.
Oh, okay.
But also, the one eye is from Horus.
Which is in the center of your brain. We've seen that. We've used that picture right at the beginning of our series of things that matches the same shape, right?
Right. Well, the mythology is Horus was attacked and through one of his eyes, the right eye, which is interesting as I have a red dot in my eye, which means that in a past life you were killed by being stabbed in your eye. Ugh. What I read once, but that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the eye of Horus too, is the right eye. They call it the eye of Ra. I don't know. It was pretty amazing. There was an odd clip in there of just a 79-year-old man who his dad was a cook in one of the palaces that's recently been renovated. And he went and lived there as a child. Mm-hmm. And the upstairs was closed. But one time when a big party was going on, he snuck upstairs to see what was there. And he said when he got back down, he received a slap. Ooh. And then they cut to something else. Think about that. What does that mean? Yeah, that was the whole story. Upstairs, what does upstairs mean? It's a palace to the secret mysteries. He got a slap. He doesn't say what he found. Is it a message? Do we think that might have been a message?
Considering how well planned the whole event was, it must have been very specific, right?
Uh-huh.
It's very strange.
Just a little short clip of that when they were showing that palace. Okay, so there was a singer. He's sitting on the river, and behind them is she's a singer, a presenter in one of those lovely boats with 6 attendants, 3 on each side, holding those beautiful light bowls. And he's going behind her, and the background is in blue, and there's a fountain being lit up in the middle of the river that's all lit with blue lights. It's really rather beautiful. No. So he said, Egypt, the land of civilization, and this is from the Book of Dead, I think. The letters of my name are encrypted down in the birth of every civilization. I am all the glimmers and the origin. My trace glimmers wherever I set foot. I am the sun that beamed to enlighten everyone. I am Egypt, maintaining the balance of the world.
Beautiful, powerful words.
Right? So there's talking about balance, it's talking about faith, it's talking about the heart, it's talking about Isis. And at the end, when they're singing this beautiful 10-minute long song, that's when the President Sisi, Isis, gets up and starts walking out to go watch the procession in these gorgeous gold chariot things. They're not drawn by horses. You can see that there were trucks underneath, but they have gold wings on the side.
Amazing.
Each one carries one of the 22, one of those master numbers.
Yeah.
Being able to access wisdom and manifest it in physical reality. And there were 38 found in that area where those were found from that area, but they only picked 22. So that's interesting.
Yeah. These light bowls are also interesting, because remember how it's been the great mystery that, you know, there's so much in the pyramids and in tombs and stuff which are beautiful paintings and stuff, but there's no evidence of flames and smoke and things like that. And so they never quite figured out, how did you light this space if you were coming in here doing ceremonies all the time when there's no flames? And then the suggestion was, once we started learning about scalar energy, that maybe they did have a way of lighting the space that wasn't to do with fire. Like, they weren't that old fashioned, they actually had advanced technology. And then I don't know where I'd heard about the round thing. This was years ago, but I'm pretty sure it might have been someone who could see it, and they could see, they said it's an orb that people carry into the space, whether it's a tomb or a pyramid.
That's right.
And lights it up, right? And lights the walls. And maybe that's what these are. I mean, okay, yeah, these days we can put you know, a wireless light bulb and batteries in there, yeah, but wouldn't it be lovely if this was the introduction to scalar energy again?
Yeah, if not, soft disclosure, they were everywhere. Dancers were carrying them. I really love the fact that the child carries the light and leads all the other children to the obelisk. That was lovely symbolism. And at the end, Sisi comes out all by himself, walks through these long, gorgeous hallways with blue and gold and all of that, and then comes to the place where he entered the building originally, and all the trucks, whatever they are, of the mummies go by in front of him, and he stands very reverently in front of them. So I was trying to see if I could find an Egyptian myth or prophecy that talks about bringing the pharaohs back together.
Right.
And I couldn't. But if any of you know about that, what that symbolism means, I mean, intuitively, I get that these were pharaohs from an era where Egypt was still pretty high before it fell.
Right. I have a theory. You remember how you and I read the book, The Initiation by Elizabeth Haik, I think is how we pronounce it, because she was German. And it talks in there about how when she channeled, was it channeling or no, kind of going back in deep meditation to see herself in this amazingly detailed past life of Egypt. As she was going through her initiation, they put her in a sarcophagus and she dreamed the lives ahead as tests and lessons to teach her what she needed to be fully initiated. And I that stuck with me, this idea of what about us? You know, here we are sitting here in 2021. Is this a dreamed life from some sarcophagus that we're lying in from thousands of years before? So when they put so much effort into very gently and ceremoniously bringing these all together again, is this the moment where they wake up?
Yeah, that would be nice. Ooh. Or maybe somehow properly prepared mummies carry access to all those memories, and you know, there's power in groups, so when they're finally all together, this is when it can be ignited and light up.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, like the obelisk did.
Like the obelisk. So the idea of you know, the curse of the mummies, don't come near it, because they needed to preserve these bodies. And I think there was some mention in that book we read as well, Initiation, that, you know, this body had to be well looked after, because if it was damaged at all, it would affect she had nothing to come back to, basically. You know, you had to look after it, because she had to have something to come back to, and she could heal once they're back in it. It's funny, isn't it? Isn't there all those Hollywood movies about mummies that they would, you know, look like they were dust falling apart, and then they would bring them, rejuvenate themselves again. I don't remember those movies very much, but I'm pretty sure that's what they were able to do, that they didn't stay looking like they were falling apart and dusty.
Yeah, they did some kind of ritual in several of them that I saw, where they brought them back to life.
That's right.
Right.
And they look perfect again.
What's going on in this new museum is they're going to bring these past leaders back to life in some way. Ooh!
It's a pretty cool theory.
Pretty cool. I like it.
And
I
that
like
building,
it.
that red building, is very much along the lines of the Ether video as well. The dome at the center, the whole layout of it is matches these free energy buildings and how the dome would draw in the power. And yeah, there's connection to all these things. And I know that there's, like, most of them are theory, but to draw in as much information as we can is going to be the best guess, I think, that we'll have as to what's going on. And then we'll find out later on and we'll go, well, that bit was right and that bit's wrong. You know, we don't know, but it's fun to try and figure out.
But we do know it has to do with balance, sacred feminine,
Sacred feminine coming back, divine.
and Christianity, the return of the Christ consciousness, not as just a male who sacrificed, but as male and female joined together.
Mm. Cool.
I like that.
And also, like you said, the Christ consciousness of not just, you know, a bloke and a woman or whatever, but all of us being able to enlighten to that crystallar consciousness enlightened by God. Yeah. Very cool. Well, that's pretty much all we've got today. So we're going to give you these links so that you can see them as well, because they're really groovy. If you've got any more ideas, you can always put them underneath the video.
Right. And if anybody knows a prophecy, please let us know. I'd be really fascinated to hear if there's one. Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.